Boys, what's good? It's Herm. We just wrapped up the first round of the 2025 NBA draft, maybe half an hour ago. I worked quick to put this together, was doing it towards the back end of the first round. I knew what a lot of the opinions were already going to be, but I'm going to grade and rank every team's first round. It obviously won't be their whole draft, as the second round is still tomorrow. Well, technically today, but you know how it is. But yeah, we're going to get into it, talk about how every team did, what I liked, what I really didn't like, some of the surprises. There were some trades as well. A lot of interesting stuff tonight with the NBA draft, and I'm excited to talk about it. Before I do, think about subscribing. It's free, it's easy. If you don't like the content, you know, just unsubscribe later, that's fine. Without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right into it. And the first one isn't going to be super interesting, but before that, let's talk about the teams with no selections. So the Cavs, Nuggets, Pistons, Warriors, Rockets, Pacers, Lakers, Bucks, and Knicks all had no first-round picks in tonight's draft because a few teams had multiple. So those teams go without a selection, and obviously they get an NA because they didn't make a single pick. And with the first team, it is the Dallas Mavericks, who I have going with an A+. They get a player who's going to be the face of their franchise essentially right away. Pretty obvious all-star talent. A lot of people think maybe even Hall of Fame potential, which I would say it's a little early for all that. But Cooper Flagg is fantastic, is just such an all-around player. 22.5 points per 36. All the stats in the video will be per 36 just to kind of even it out a little bit. 8.8 rebounds and nearly 40% from three. Is going to have an equal impact both on the offensive end and on the defensive end, and just wreak havoc on both ends of the floor. Was first on my big board as well as in the statistical ranking I did based off of the raw numbers and the efficiency. He was first in that as well. So Cooper Flagg, a no-brainer at number one, and the Dallas Mavericks get an A+ for that. But now let's get into the parts where it gets a little interesting. And the San Antonio Spurs I have as an A+ as well. They get Dylan Harper at number 2 and Carter Bryant at pick number 14, who a lot of people thought was a top 10 talent. I had him at 12th on my big board, but still good value at 14th. A lot of reactions right after the draft are, how could we let this guy fall to San Antonio? Because he's just so complimentary and fits what they need for a team that's trying to get better and compete in the Western Conference as a 3-and-D type wing that's just so valuable as an archetype. And the Spurs needed that, and they got the second best player in this draft class in Dylan Harper. 21.5 points, 4.5 assists, and nearly 50% from the field. The three-point shooting isn't quite there yet, which has caused some fit concerns with De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle, but I don't think De'Aaron Fox is probably in the long-term plans for this franchise. Dylan Harper is the point guard of the future, the franchise point guard, but for right now, they'll probably play him at the 2 alongside De'Aaron Fox and just get him more reps on the court, but I think is a guy who's going to be pretty good as a rookie. And Carter Bryant, I think, is very good value at pick number 14. Also, with an A+, the last A+ team, I'm giving it to the Utah Jazz. They took Ace Bailey at number 5, which was a bit of a shock to some people. Ace had pretty much made it clear he didn't want to go to Philly, Charlotte, or Utah at pick number 5, picks 3 through 5. And basically, his management before the draft made it clear, I want to go 6, 7, 8 to one of Washington, New Orleans, or Brooklyn, a team where I can get a lot of shots up and kind of have a team built around me. But I don't think Utah is a situation where you can't have that. I think this is a team that is going to let Ace Bailey get a lot of shots up, is going to let him be the scorer, because Lauri Markkanen most likely getting traded this offseason, Walker Kessler reportedly available, as well as Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson. A lot of the vets are available for trade. And as far as other guys they have right now, it's kind of just guards, whether it's Isaiah Collier or Keontae George. They do have Filipowski, who I think they like as a big man, but they needed a wing, and a wing who can score. And I think Ace Bailey landed in a spot that gives him a chance to be an all-star someday, because he's going to get the shots that he wanted. 19 points per 36, 7.7 rebounds, 46% from the field. I also like, basically, Danny Ainge was told, don't draft me, and he just said, we do not care. We are taking you anyway because we think you're the best talent on the board. And I really like that. I mean, maybe the two teams above them were scared to do that, but Utah was not. And because of that, they went ahead and took him, and I really like the mindset, and I also really like his fit in Utah. And then they also trade up from 21 to pick 18 to get Walter Clayton Jr., a guard that they really like. It is a little weird, like when the team already has, like I said, Isaiah Collier and Keontae George, but they really wanted shooting. It was a big point of emphasis that they were focusing on, according to Shams. And Walter Clayton gives that 39% from three, 20.2 points per game, and can play alongside the other guys in the backcourt, whether it's Collier or George. I think he can play along them too and still be real solid. Does have comparisons to Jamal Murray on the high end, and a team that was pretty poor in clutch offense last season. And Walter Clayton just had one of the most clutch tournament runs we've ever seen. And because of that, I like this pick for them. The stat ranking had him as the 11th best player in the class. So according to analytics anyway, is a good value pick here at 18. I had him at 24th because he's a little undersized at 6'2", but the stat and the production was really good at Florida, led them to a championship, and just get two really talented players, and because of that, I think it's a big win for Utah. After that, I have the Grizzlies going Cedric Coward. The Grizzlies did go Cedric Coward, sorry. They called him Colin Cowherd on the broadcast, which I was just appalled by. I cannot believe that that's something that we're okay with happening. There should be an apology on the broadcast. This is one of the biggest nights of the guy's life, and you're going to call him a clickbait personality, which is, I just don't like it. But 19 points per 36, nearly 8 rebounds as a 6'5" wing, and 40% from deep. The more and more you watch Cedric Coward, you're like, what is the weakness in this dude's game? I don't think he really has one. Is probably a top 3 perimeter defender in this draft class, on top of being a very complete offensive player, and is a guy who I think is going to contribute for Memphis right away in year one. They traded off of Desmond Bane, got a bunch of stuff back, and drafted his replacement right away in Cedric Coward. I had him 8th on my big board, which is higher than some people. I really like him. And the stat ranking had him as the second best player in the entire draft class. The production and the efficiency were both off the charts. Shot over 55% from the field. Only played 6 games for Washington State this year, but the production when he was there was ridiculous. And I'm very excited to see how he fits in Memphis alongside Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and the rest of the guys they have on the roster. I think it's really good value at 11. I think he was easily a top 10 player in the class, and obviously they thought so too as they traded up to get him. Also, with an A for their draft, is the Washington Wizards. They get Trey Johnson, kind of an immediate replacement for Jordan Poole, as a shooting guard scorer. 20.7 points per 36, 2.8 rebounds, and nearly 40% from deep. Does take a lot of shots and some difficult ones, but the efficiency was still there, nearly 40% from deep, despite being the number 1 player on every team scouting report all season, and the defense is kind of going at him and focusing on him. He's just a gifted scorer, and because of that, I really like it. I had him as the 4th best player in the class, and he goes 6th. Whether they got him or Ace Bailey, I was going to like the pick for Washington, and they end up getting Trey Johnson, and I think it's a good fit. Should start for them in year one. I don't know if they try CJ McCollum at the 1 or what they're going to do there. Maybe they even try Trey Johnson at the 3, but I think almost immediately Trey Johnson is, if not the most exciting young guy on the team, probably number 2. It depends on how you view Alex Sarr. But Trey Johnson, I just really like him. I think he has all-star upside, and to get him here at 6, I think is good value. They also did take Will Riley at pick number 21. I had him a little lower on my big board, as well as the stats had him a little lower than that. But a guy who can really put the ball in the basket, nearly 18 points per 36. I think they said on the broadcast he had 31 in his debut for Illinois this year, which is a freshman record for them. And is a guy who, if he gets more efficient, is going to be really good value at pick number 21. Then with an A-, we drop here a little bit. I do have the Charlotte Hornets, and I really like Con Knippel. I think that pick was fantastic. 17 points per 36, 3.2 assists, and over 40% from deep. Item is the 3rd best player in this draft class. The stat ranking had him as 5th. It's just very, very smooth at the catch and shoot. Solid defensive player as well, and the hustle is just really there. They were showing on the broadcast just clips of him diving on the floor, going for loose balls. Is a hustle player 100%, and is just a guy who's a really good connective piece. And for a team that already kind of has their main offensive guys in LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, who they're going to continue to build around, I like how Con Knipple can just kind of fit in between them and be a really solid piece there. I think it's good value at number 4. I really like Con Knipple. The advanced numbers really like him as well. And if it was just him, I might think about giving it an A. But Liam McNeely is a guy who I've had a hard time placing. It was really cool to see him on the broadcast, really emotional after he got picked, was clearly so happy to be drafted in the first round, was the last guy from that Montverde group that got drafted. And the scoring is good, 16 points per 36, but was kind of profiled out of high school as a shooter and really struggled shooting in his 1 year at UConn. But my big board and the stat ranking had him at the same spot he was drafted, so I can't have too much qualms with it, but the shooting does worry me a little bit on McNeely. I really love the Con pick, and I'm okay with the Liam pick, so I'll give them an A-. After that, the Hawks, I'm giving an A-, which you might say, Herm, they didn't really do that much, but I loved what they did. They trade back from 13 to 23 and get the Pelicans unprotected 2026 first. There's a good chance the Pelicans are bad next year, and if all of a sudden with the lottery that ends up being a top 3 pick in a draft that has 3 bona fide number 1 talents in AJ DeBansa, Cam Boozer, and Darren Peterson, I think that's awesome. I really like that for them. Getting that pick, I think, is super valuable. Maybe the most valuable thing that was traded tonight is that 2026 pick from New Orleans. And on top of that, the player is good value as well, because there were rumors coming out before the draft that Atlanta had promised Asa Newell if he fell to 13, they would draft him there. They moved back 10 spots, and they still get him, the guy that they really liked. 19 points per 36, 8.5 rebounds, 54% from the field. They already have their starting lineup pretty much filled out with the guys Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, as well as Jalen Johnson, Zachary Risachet, and Kristaps Porzingis, who they just traded for. I think they are doing a really good job right now. I really love what their GM is doing there. And to get Asa Newell 10 picks later than you were willing to take him, I think is fantastic value. And getting that pick as well, I just love it. And with the Philadelphia 76ers, I have them at an A- as well. VJ Edgecombe was their only pick of the night. And you could say this should be a little higher, but I just would have went Con Knipple if I was them. I probably would have given that an A or an A+, just because of the connective piece that he would be. In the best case scenario, I think you give VJ Edgecombe the ball a little bit more and let him develop as an offensive talent. Getting comparisons to Victor Oladipo, Dwayne Wade is just a fantastic athlete, but as kind of a complementary role player, the shooting concerns me a little bit. If you're going to have the ball in his hands and let him attack, I think it's less of a concern, but his fit with Philadelphia I don't think is super seamless, but is very talented. I had him as the 5th best player in this class, and obviously with an A-, I don't hate the pick. I think it's a good one, and I think the Sixers got a really talented player that they can build around moving forward. Then after that, with the Suns, we are dropping from the A group. I'm giving them a B+, and this is one where I almost gave it an A-, but I think the timing was a little bit questionable. So just seconds, it felt like, maybe even like a minute, but a minute 30 seconds before they're on the clock at number 10, they trade for Mark Williams from Charlotte, which I like that trade. I mean, Mark Williams, I was hoping he went to the Lakers last season. I was hoping that trade went through because he is super efficient. He blocks a lot of shots when he's engaged and just scores well around the rim. I think he is a very good kind of throwback big man a little bit, who's really athletic and just doesn't make a lot of mistakes. The foul trouble is something that's a little concerning with him, as well as the injury stuff, which is why he didn't end up with the Lakers, because he failed the physical. But I really like Mark Williams, but then kind of doubling down and immediately taking a center right after was a little confusing, especially when I do think they need point guard play. But come on, Maluach was a good pick at 10 as well. I like the trade and I like the pick, but I think together there are some questions raised with it, which is the only thing that kept their night from being an A. 11.2 rebounds, 2.2 blocks, and over 70% from the field is kind of a similar mold to Mark Williams, although I think he can be a little better defensively, a better rim protector. Probably this season they start Mark and bring Maluach off the bench and then kind of try to develop Maluach into their starting five. But this is a good value pick at number 10. I had him 9th on my big board. The stat ranking had him 6th. I think it's a good pick, and I think it's a good trade. But again, just together, it's a little confusing. And then the Sacramento Kings trade up to number 24. I'm giving this a B+. I really like it. Trading up for a pick in the 20s, I'm going to have a hard time giving that an A, but I still think it's very good. Because Nick Clifford to me was one of the more underrated players in this draft class. I think was a little doubted because he's 23 years old already. That's something that I don't like that, disrespecting players because they're older. A lot of times what they're at right now, you might say their ceiling is a little lower, but their talent that they already are is a lot better than a lot of these raw prospects. Nick Clifford is already a good player, 19 points per 36, nearly 10 rebounds, as I believe a 6'5 wing, and nearly 50% from the field, shot about 38% from three as well. Doesn't have a lot of holes in his game, came back for one more season at Colorado State and doubled his assist output. Which was one of the biggest qualms with him last year when he was in the pre-draft process, is that the passing wasn't enough, and he came back and improved upon that. I had him 15th on my big board. The stat ranking had him 8th. I think it's extremely good value for Sacramento here at number 24, and I just really like the pick for them. I think it was a super smart decision for them to get in this draft and take him. At number, well, not a number, but I have B+ for the Miami Heat as well. At number 20, they take point guard Kasparas Jakushonis out of Illinois. Is a guy who I had ranked 11th in the class. A lot of people had him ranked in the top 10, and a lot of people expected him to go top 10. So the slip down the draft was a little confusing. I think just the biggest concern was the shooting at under 32% from the field as a guard, but nearly 17 points, 5.3 assists, and the shooting is a legitimate concern, which is why I'm not giving it an A despite being drafted so much later than I had him mocked. Miami, I wouldn't have hated if they got a shooter in there, especially when you're going to play Bam at the 4, Khalil Ware at the 5, and maybe even Hawkes at the 3, who did struggle with the shot last year. So the shooting could be a little bit of an issue for this Miami team, so maybe it's not a super seamless fit. But I think they saw the talent with KJ here and just said the talent's too great. We can't let him fall anymore, and I think that was a smart strategy. I'm giving it a B+. For the Oklahoma City Thunder, I'm going to give this pick a B. Thomas Sorber, they go at number 15. Nearly 10 rebounds, 2.3 blocks, and 53% from the field. Item 17th on the big board and 23rd in the stat ranking. I have it over a C, so obviously I think it's better than just average. I think this is a good pickup for them. They do have Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein right now, but Isaiah Hartenstein, I believe, has a team option after next season, and if they can get another big shot-blocking guy next to Chet, who's a little more physical, I think they want to do that, and Sorber is like 6'10", 250, so just a very good physical, strong, kind of bully ball athlete, who's also versatile defensively, can guard out on the perimeter, can kind of do switches on the picks and do it at a high level. Even some hedging there. But Sorber is a really interesting defender, has an over 7-foot wingspan despite being under 7 feet, and just kind of fits the OKC profile of interesting defensive guys. And the pick and roll of him and Nikola Topic in Summer League is going to be super fun to watch. I like this pick. I'm giving it a B. The Orlando Magic as well, I'm giving this pick a B. The only reason it's not higher is because of the undersizedness of Jace Richardson. Standing at 6'1" is definitely a shortcoming, but one of the Magic's biggest needs was shooting, and they got a shooter. 41% from 3 in his freshman season at Michigan State, 17 points, nearly 5 rebounds. For a guy his size is impressive rebounding wise. 19th on my big board, 14th in the stat ranking. A lot of people had him top 10. It's good value for Orlando here at number 25. The height again is a little concerning, but for a team that has Banchero, Wagner on the wing, Desmond Bane, who I wouldn't say is undersized as a guard. Jalen Suggs, who's a really good defensive guard. I think they can make up for it. And really what you're doing right here is probably just sliding Jace Richardson into the Cole Anthony role from last season. The Chicago Bulls, I'm giving a C. They took Noah Asenge at pick number 12 out of France. 18.8 points per 36, 8 rebounds. Not a good shooter, 25% from 3. I don't hate the pick. I just don't love it either. This is kind of a selection where I'm like, meh. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. Is a guy who, if you watch his tape, falls down a lot, which is weird to watch. And the shot selection isn't fantastic. Kind of dribbles head down into contested lanes a lot. And the Bulls here, for a team that I would say needed a center pretty badly, especially if they're giving up on Vooch. This feels like a second chance on a defensive forward like they tried to take with Patrick Williams. Patrick Williams didn't work out because he was raw as a prospect and he couldn't really shoot the ball, which is kind of the same problem you're having with Asenge here. I don't quite have as big of a problem with him missing his team's finals overseas to go to the draft as some people seem to. I mean, going to the NBA should be your end goal, and I think prioritizing the NBA isn't such a bad thing. But the just kind of decision-making, the rawness to his game is something that concerns me a little bit, especially with the past with Patrick Williams, but is only 18 years old, is a pretty good athlete, has a really big wingspan, and could be intriguing next to Matas Buzelis in the front court. So there are ups and downs to the pick. I just don't love it at number 12. And the Boston Celtics, I'm also giving a C. I think this is fine, but I would have liked to see them get a center. Al Horford and Luke Cornett are both free agents, and they just traded Kristaps Porzingis. Really the only center they have right now is Neemias Queta. So getting a center would have been cool, whether it was Kalkbrenner or Maxime Reynaud. But they end up going Hugo Gonzalez, a raw prospect out of Spain. Didn't get a ton of play time for Real Madrid last season, and because of that, the production numbers just aren't all that good. 11.4 points, 5.9 rebounds, and 41% from the field. But a lot of teams reportedly really liked him. Has been on the radar for a while. And I had him 30th on my big board, 30th in the stat ranking. It's not too far off from the pick. I don't hate it. I just don't think this was the biggest need that Boston had. We'll see where they target the centers, whether it's in free agency or through a trade. But to me, that was their biggest need, and they just didn't address it. The Minnesota Timberwolves, I'm giving a C-. This is another thing where I just don't think this is their biggest need. Joan Behringer, I think, is actually a pretty good value pick here at 17. I'm 14th on my big board. A lot of people thought he was going to go lottery. 9.4 rebounds, 2.7 blocks, and 64.4% from the field. Is an efficient rim protector who is probably the best shot blocker in this draft class. But for a team that already has Rudy Gobert, I assume they want to bring Naz Reid back, and they have Julius Randle who can play some small ball 5. This just wasn't the biggest hole. Mike Conley's almost 40 years old, and Rob Dillingham I don't think is a traditional point guard. I think the Timberwolves' biggest need was playmaking, and instead they kind of took a position that they're already loaded on. So for me, I just don't love the fit here, but I do like the player, and if they end up losing Naz Reid in free agency, I think it's a guy who will be productive for you. The New Orleans Pelicans, I'm giving a D+, which isn't a negative against the players because I actually really like the talents that they picked up in this draft class. Jeremiah Fears, I had as my 6th best player. The stat ranking didn't love him. It doesn't love Derek Queen either, but I had them higher on my big board than the picks for both selections. 20.4 points per 36, 4.9 assists. Did shoot just 28% from 3. I think that's the biggest weakness in his game right now. But gets to the free throw line at will, draws a lot of contact, is a physical guard, and is super explosive. Blows by people with ease. And with DeJounte Murray likely missing the start of the season, is a guy who could start at point guard for them early on and be in the backcourt next to Jordan Poole. Jeremiah Fears is a super exciting guard and a very fun one to watch. And him and Jordan Poole are going to be super fun league pass hoops. The defense, I think, might be a little bit of an issue there, but at least Fears does get steals, 2 steals per 36. Does poke the ball out a lot, and because of that can get out on the fast break. But a 6 6'3" guard who can't really shoot the ball. There are some concerns there. A lot of people had him in the mid-teens. I had him 6th. I just believe he's going to work out. I think he's a good talent. And then Derek Queen, they take at 13. They trade up 10 spots and get him at 13. Nearly 20 points per 36, 10.6 rebounds, and 53% from the field. Is a really good offense-based big man who next to Zion Williamson could be really interesting as two bigger guys who are both really good on the offensive end. Queen, a pretty good playmaker as well. Shot only 20% from 3, but he's just not a floor spacer. But Zion, Derek Queen, and Jeremiah Fears all sharing the court together. The spacing is going to be kind of rough, so the fit questions are fair if you're going to judge that. But it's just inexcusable to give up this pick. I don't know what Joe Dumars is doing. I actually didn't hate the trade for Jordan Poole. I know a lot of people didn't like it. Jordan Poole is a lot better last season than a lot of people seem to notice, maybe because he was playing in Washington. But Jordan Poole quietly had the best season of his career last year, and I still think he's a good talent. I don't mind that trade at all. But I do mind giving up your pick next year, basically for nothing, to move up 10 spots to take Derek Queen, which I like Derek Queen, but is it worth giving up potentially a top 5, top 3 pick in next year's draft to move up 10 spots in this one? I don't think it is. I just don't think there's any way to defend that trade. It's bad. It's not good. And for a start to Joe Dumars' career as an executive here, I think it's off to a rocky start. I just don't like it at all. And it would scare me if I'm a fan of the Pelicans. And it makes it really interesting with guys like Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. If I'm other teams, I'm calling the Pelicans every day just to try to see what I can give up to get those guys, because it's probably at a reduced cost if he's willing to make moves like this. Just throw regard out the window completely. Because the West is really good. The West is going to be fantastic next year. It's really good basically 1 through 13 with the Jazz at the bottom and maybe the Suns at the bottom and Utah. I already said Utah. Utah and Phoenix. But even Portland is trying to get better for next year, which we'll talk about them in a second. But even the teams that are closer towards the bottom, Portland should be better. San Antonio should be better. Even Sacramento, who should still be solid. If you're the Pelicans, especially with the injury history of Zion Williamson, I think it's super risky to give up that pick, and I just don't think it was a smart move at all. I will, say once again, I like the players. Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, I think are going to be good players in this league, and because of that, maybe you don't care. But it's just not smart to throw caution to the wind like that, and because of that, I'm going to give it a D+. If they didn't have to do that trade to get these two guys, I probably would have given this an A, because I really like the players. I just don't like trading that pick. With the 9th pick, the Toronto Raptors took center/forward Colin Murray-Boyles. I'm giving it a D+. I had him 18th on my big board, and he was 13th in the stat ranking. If Jakob Poeltl isn't your longtime big, I think you need to take a big defensive-minded center. Colin Murray-Boyles is 6'7". He's undersized for the center position, and with the team that they currently have, I just don't think it makes a ton of sense. 26.5% from 3. We did see one good shooting season from Scotty Barnes, but I just don't know if that's something you can count on going forward. And putting another guy in the lineup who can't really shoot the ball from deep, I think it's going to cause even more fit concerns. I would have rather taken Kaman Maluach or Thomas Sorber as defensive-minded bigs. Even Joan Behringer I would have probably liked to take over Murray-Boyles here. And Murray-Boyles, I think, is a good player. I just think the situation and the fit in Toronto just isn't good. I think maybe the third to last team, I have the Clippers here with center Yannick Conan Niederhauser out of Penn State. And the numbers with him aren't bad either. 18.5 points per 36, 3.3 blocks, and 61% from the field. Is just a guy who I didn't have in my top 30. And I think centers like Maxime Reynaud, who I think is one of the more underrated players in this class and is going to be fantastic value tomorrow. Rasheer Fleming was on the board as a forward who can really space the floor, and Ryan Kalkbrenner I also would have had ranked higher as a center. So I think there were better players at the position as well as just better players on the board overall. So I think it's a little bit of a reach here for the Clippers, but I don't think it's an F. I don't think it's a pick that's going to fail miserably or something that I really hate. I just think there were other options. With the second to last team here, I do have the Portland Trailblazers taking Hansen Yang, center out of China, at pick number 16. I would say probably pretty easily the most stunning pick of the first round. I saw people asking if it was the worst pick ever. I don't think it's that. But this was a guy who was probably going to go mid-second round, and you took him at 16. 17.6 points per 36, 3 blocks, and nearly 60% from the field. Hansen Yang isn't a bad player, and he's a very interesting prospect. Just the value play here at 16 doesn't make any sense. You could have traded back likely multiple times and still got Hansen Yang. They loved showing on the broadcast that there was a Nuggets source saying he was the Chinese Jokic. And if he ends up being the Chinese Jokic, then no one's going to care that they took him at 16. But if he doesn't work out, then it's going to look even worse, because this is just a guy who would have been available, maybe 30 picks after what they took him at. So because of that, I just don't love where he was taken at, even though I do think Hansen Yang is an interesting player, and it was cool to see him in the crowd come down and be able to shake the commissioner's hand, even though he wasn't invited to the green room. He really performed well at the Combine, and he's going to be an interesting guy to watch going forward. It's reported he's going to play for them this season, isn't going to be a draft and stash guy, and we'll see what he looks like. I think it also signifies they're probably moving off DeAndre Ayton sooner rather than later, which shouldn't come as a huge shock to people. But Hansen Yang's playmaking, as well as just the offensive game that he has, I think makes it so you can play him next to Donovan Clingan, which could make a really interesting two-big lineup. Yang is 7'2". It is not a bad prospect. It is just a bad value play here at number 16. And with the worst draft performance maybe I've ever seen is the Brooklyn Nets. It felt like almost every pick was a reach, and they kept all 5 picks. When they had 5 picks in the first round, it was widely reported that they were going to control draft night, that they'd be able to make a big trade, get up in the draft, and get a top-tier prospect, and they didn't do that. They kept all 5 picks. They're the first team to ever make 5 first-round picks, and hopefully they're the last. Yegor Demin was a shocker to me at number 8. I had him ranked 21st on my board. The stat ranking had him ranked 26th. Was just a very massive reach there. And taking guys that aren't good shooters and very inefficient as guards, I just don't think it usually works out. Josh Giddey is a guy that has kind of worked out over time here because the playmaking and the creation is so good. But Demin doesn't really have a ton of great self-creation, and he isn't efficient. The playmaking is a big need for Brooklyn, and I understand addressing that, but Demin would have been available at pick number 19, and you took him at pick number 8. There were just many guys that I think were better players at pick number 8, and they just avoided that and took someone else. At pick number 19, they took point guard Nolan Traore out of France. 19 points for 36, 7.4 assists, 31% from the field. Another really good playmaker, but another point guard who can't shoot the ball. And they took him early as well. I had him 27th on my big board. The stat ranking had him as 27th also. And it was a bit of a reach at pick number 19. Then they take Drake Powell, shooting guard, at pick number 22. 10.5 points, 4.8 rebounds, and 38% from 3. At least this is a guy who can kind of shoot the ball. But just as another guard who I think was also a reach, Drake Powell to me had a second round value, and they took him in the first. Then they take Ben Seraph, point guard out of Israel. And then they take Danny Wolf, who I actually think is their best pick. That's fantastic value to get him at 27. The 16th guy on my big board, the stat ranking had him 9th. I think one of the more unique and interesting players in this draft class as a 7-footer who can bring the ball up the floor and be a playmaker for you, I think is super cool. But just about every player they took needs the ball in their hands and is a lead initiator on offense. They pretty much took the same position for every pick except for Drake Powell, and because of that, I mean, that's just not good. It's not good drafting. It's not smart for building out a roster, and kind of the only guy who is a huge piece for you going forward. Cam Thomas, who averaged 24 points a game last year for you, is about to be a restricted free agent, and if I'm Cam Thomas, this makes me want to go somewhere else. Like, your only real piece of the future was a guard, and you responded to that by drafting 5 guys that are essentially going to be guards, because even Danny Wolf, who's a 7-footer, is going to excel most if he's able to do some self-creation and bring the ball up the floor. So you took 5 backcourt guys when your most interesting player is a backcourt guy, and you used all 5 picks. I just really hate this draft for Brooklyn. I was really excited with what it was going to look like for them, and I just think they did about as bad of a job as possible because they reached heavily with their first 3 picks. I think Seraph is solid value, and I think Danny Wolf is good value, but the positional drafting doesn't make any sense. The players that they took for most of these don't make any sense. And I just really don't like it for Brooklyn. If you do, go ahead and let me know that and kind of explain to me why. But for me, I just don't like this for Brooklyn at all. But that is going to be the rankings for your 2025 NBA draft. The entire first round graded with picks 1 through 30. So let me know your thoughts. Subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Think about liking the video, and just drop a comment. Let me know what you agreed with, what you disagree with, where you would have had teams ranked, teams that you really liked, teams that you didn't like, stuff like that. But again, I hope you boys enjoyed it, and have a good one. Peace.